Now let's move into highlighting 3. With highlighting 3, we start out by teaching students that whenever we read, there are 3 elements that we look for. The first is the topic, the second is the main idea, and the third are the important details. The topic is 1, 2, or 3 words describing what the passage is about. Some examples of topics include bluebirds, rainbows, or the Civil War. Whenever we identify a topic, we always highlight it in blue. The second element that we look for is the main idea, which is what the author is saying about the topic. Let's say, for instance, the topic was World War I. The main idea might be there were many causes for World War I. Or, if the topic was trees, the main idea might be growing trees is an easy process. We always highlight the main idea in green. The third element that we look for are the important details, which we highlight in yellow. Important details are significant pieces of information describing the main idea. There are 2 points to keep in mind when we highlight the important details. The first one is that we should try to only highlight words and phrases and not full sentences when possible. And the other piece is to only highlight what is truly important information and not just regular details. Let's take a look inside highlighting 3. If we turn to the first part of the book, we'll notice that the book starts by introducing those 3 concepts that I just mentioned: topic, main idea, and important details. The student is given spaces to write his or her own samples of topics. For example, the student here selected outdoor games, breakfast foods, and types of transportation, and then went back and highlighted those topics in blue. Then on the right side of the page, after main idea is introduced, the student is given sample topics and then asked to come up with his or her own samples of main ideas that correspond to those topics. For instance, in this section, the topic of snacks was given. The student came up with the main idea, snacks come in different types, and then went back and highlighted that main idea in green. Next, important details are introduced. And on the following page, which is page 4, students are given a chart and are given various topics. They are then asked to come up with their own main ideas and important details to support those topics. For instance, for the first one here, the student was given the topic of summer. This student came up with the main idea, summer offers several fun activities. And then the important details, water sports, running, playing at the beach. Now that we've learned that background information, it's time to apply those concepts to reading different passages. What's unique about highlighting 3 is that the book introduces multi-paragraph passages and also introduces the concept of summarizing. Let's take a look at exercise 1.0. I'm going to read the passage first. It's very important that the student reads the passage first before going back and doing the highlighting. Therefore, we have a dual level of processing. I'm going to start by reading this passage. It's important that the student reads the passage first and then goes back and does the highlighting. This way, we have a dual level of processing. Baseball is one of America's favorite sports. It is an athletic game that is played with a hard ball and a bat. There are 2 teams with 9 players each that play against each other. Baseball was one of the earliest games to be played professionally in the United States. It is also the most popular game that is played. Large crowds of fans travel to parks and stadiums to watch baseball games. Millions more people watch the games on television and listen to them on the radio. Baseball games are reported in almost every newspaper in the United States. Baseball is also played at different clubs and athletic groups, as well as at high schools, colleges, and junior leagues. Many Americans play casual games of baseball on sunny afternoons. Baseball is now played in almost every country in the world. Now that we've done the reading, it's time to go back and highlight the topic in blue, main idea in green, and important details in yellow. In this case, we decided that the topic was baseball, so the student highlighted baseball in blue. The main idea was one of America's favorite sports, so the student highlighted that main idea in green. And finally, we go through and highlight the important details in yellow. In this case, we have athletic game, played with a hard ball and a bat, 2 teams, 9 players, one of the earliest games, most popular game, large crowd, television, radio, newspaper, different clubs, athletic groups, high schools, colleges, junior leagues, played in almost every country. Keep in mind that there are no exact right or wrong answers for important details. The students can decide what they feel is an important detail or not, and you can always open that concept of salient details up for discussion. The next step in highlighting 3, which is unique from highlighting 1 and highlighting 2, is that we introduce the concept of how to write a 1 to 2 line summary about the passage that we just read. Underneath the passage, the student is asked to write a 1 to 2 line summary of the passage in your own words. In this case, the student came up with the summary, "Baseball is a popular sport that is played around the world." Keep in mind that there is no such thing as an exact right or wrong summary. The student can come up with his or her own choice of what a good summary would be. Also keep in mind that some students may have difficulties writing these summaries in the beginning, but the more students practice, the easier these summaries will become. Finally, the student is asked to answer different multiple choice questions. This is where we can introduce a test-taking strategy. We teach students that when we solve multiple choice questions, there are different kinds of questions that we come across. Either an explicit question, which is a question whose answer comes straight from the passage, like a fact or a statistic, or an implicit question, which is more of an inference. The student has to think about what the question is asking in order to come up with the answer. As the student answers each one of these questions, he or she should write next to it, whether it's E for explicit or I for implicit. Let's take a look at question number 1. This passage is mostly about A, basketball facts, B, baseball facts, C, the origin of baseball, D, soccer facts. In this case, because of the wording of the question, the student has to think about the answer in order to come up with the correct choice. This question is an implicit question, so we would put an I next to it and circle the correct answer, which is B. Question 2 reads, in a baseball game, blank teams with blank players each play against each other. The answer here is A, 2, 9. Because the answer comes straight from the passage, this question is an explicit one. Therefore, we would mark this question with an E. Question 3 reads, baseball is played in all of the following places except, the answer here is D, office buildings. Because that choice also comes straight from the passage, we mark that one with an E. Finally, question 4, baseball is played in C, almost every country in the world. Because this answer comes straight from the passage, again, we would mark E for explicit. Let's do one more together. We'll turn to exercise 1.1. I'll start by reading the passage. Keep in mind that if you like, you can do some of these passages as oral exercises and some as student-read independent exercises. They can be done either way. Cultural sharing helps bring together different cultures from throughout the world. The World Cup is a prime example of cultural sharing. For this event, soccer players from around the world compete against each other. Fans follow the actions of their country's players to carefully track their performance. At this event, which is held every 4 years, players from around the world play the same game. They use the exact same equipment and follow the same guidelines. Although the players and fans might speak different languages, the rules of the game are identical. It is a shared cultural experience. For most players, their ultimate goal is to win the World Cup at some point in their career. Now that we've read the passage, let's go back and highlight the topic, main idea, and important details. Here the student highlighted cultural sharing as the topic. World Cup is a prime example as the main idea, and then went through and highlighted the important details, including soccer players from around the world compete against each other, fans follow, held every 4 years, around the world, same game, same equipment, same guidelines, different languages, rules identical. Notice that the student, for the most part, only highlighted words and phrases and not full sentences. Next, the student was asked to write a 1 to 2 line summary of the passage in his or her own words. This student chose to write, "The World Cup is a great example of cultural sharing." This is a summary that works. Other students might choose to write 2 lines and include a few more details to help summarize that passage. Again, there is no such thing as an exact right or wrong answer. Finally, the student is asked to answer 4 different multiple choice questions. It's a good idea to have the students write whether the questions are implicit or explicit. Question 1 asks, "This passage is mostly about..." Again, the student had to really think about what this passage is about in order to come up with the answer. The choice is B, an example of cultural sharing. Because the student had to think in order to come up with this answer, this is an implicit question which we would mark with an I. Question 2. The World Cup is held every blank years. The answer here is C, 4. Because this answer comes straight from the passage, this is an explicit question, which we mark with an E. Question 3. All of the following defines cultural sharing in the world except D, the best team wins. Again, because this answer comes straight from the passage, it is an explicit question, which we mark with an E. And number 4, cultural sharing can best be defined as A, events that bring together different cultures. The answer here is explicit, so we mark that with an E. As students progress through the book, the passages become longer with more details. The more students practice reading and highlighting this information and creating these 1 to 2 line summaries, the easier this concept will be, and the more they can start to apply this relatively sophisticated concepts to their textbooks and other academic work.